Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another video. Today for you guys, I want to talk about Babylon's Fall because, oh boy, what an absolute disappointment. I've had my eye on this game for quite some time, ever since the initial reveal back at E3 2018, considering the fact that it's coming from both Square Enix as well as the famous Platinum Games, and the fact that Platinum Games are an absolute masterclass when it comes to developing action-orientated games like, of course, Nier Automata or the Bayonetta series, with the trailer that was later on released at the very end of 2019. This was looking like another surefire hit for Platinum Games. Super flashy, fast-paced action gameplay with the Nier Automata floating weapons behind the character's back. Upslash your enemies and give them the Monday Madness and then follow up with the tether pull combo. That's some Devil May Cry 5 shit. And I especially love this scene where the player character uses the tethers to pull up the giant's big fuck-off sword and stab him with it. Yeah, none of this happened in the current final product. After the initial reveal back in 2018, it took a little while before we next saw anything to do with Babylon's Fall. As I just mentioned, 2019 in December was the next time we'd see anything from the game, proper gameplay. And this trailer is really cool looking. It really displayed that, okay, Platinum Games are at it again. But what we see nowadays with Babylon's Fall compared to what we saw in that 2019 trailer seems like a totally different feel. What Babylon's Fall is today is a live service co-op action RPG with, of course, looting aspects, taking some keys from, I guess, Godfall, but with that Platinum Games action infused into the mix. There is a general hub area like you would have in something like Destiny, and from the hub you then take on missions, part of a mission board, and that's the core of the gameplay. You get sent into dungeons, defeat rounds of enemies, collect loot, get XP, collect currency, and at the end of the mission, you'll likely face off against a slightly stronger enemy or boss. The massive issue here though is that, to be expected, absolute chef's kiss action gameplay that you come to expect from Platinum Games, like we saw in Bayonetta, or of course Nier Automata, is watered down here beyond belief. When you're playing this game, it does feel like a Platinum Games game. Like, it's quite apparent that some of that Nier Automata DNA is actually within Babylon's Fall, with the running animations and also the swords floating behind the character, very much Nier Automata. Looking at this gameplay clip here of me using my bow and being able to run around and shoot the bow at the same time screams Nier Automata. So it's absolutely painful to go back to that 2019 trailer and to see what was portrayed in that trailer. From what it seemed like, the gameplay in itself seemed a lot faster. I mean, in the actual pace of the game itself, and looked like a single player experience. Now granted, at the end of that trailer, we do see a key art of 4 characters looking towards Babylon's Tower, which definitely could insinuate the fact that multiplayer was in mind from the very get-go. But if that was the initial idea of the game, you kind of would have thought that Square Enix would have talked about that at first and put that into the actual information. Not only that, but for the first gameplay trailer showed off 4 characters fighting through a dungeon. I strongly believe that initially this game was supposed to be a single player action RPG with potential multiplayer components there, just not a completely dedicated live service co-op game. Now Babylon's Fall was supposed to get a full proper unveiling, I suppose you could say, of sorts, during the summer of 2020. But unfortunately, a delay struck, and the development team came to Twitter to say that that will not be happening. It wasn't until then, later on in 2021 at E3 last year, where we got the full unveiling of Babylon's Fall. And we saw a very different version, one that felt extremely different to that initial teaser trailer. Now, no doubt, of course, the delays that hit Babylon's Fall was likely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think the major changing factor here is likely because over the past few years, live service games have become a major thing. It's something that, of course, the massive giant like Square Enix would likely want to get involved with. And I wouldn't say this is some sort of direction change from Platinum Games themselves, but because of the fact that this is getting published by Square Enix, it was likely a call made from the higher-ups. I think that the direction of Babylon's Fall was changed midway through to be changed into a live service co-op action RPG. I think once the reveal happened last year, a lot of interest towards Babylon's Fall just kind of dropped off. The gameplay pacing seemed a lot slower, and the whole idea of this being a live service co-op action RPG turned a lot of people off. Also, the art style of the game too. Babylon's Fall quite literally goes for an art style in the sense of, yeah, the art style of this game is meant to depict that of an oil painting, which personally I find quite unique. It's just the execution here is not good. The reception was so bad towards how the game looked last year that Platinum Games went ahead and altered the art style to make it less blurry looking. The game still semi-what looked the same back in 2019, but because of the fact that we knew this was still a work in progress, most people obviously give the developers the benefit of the doubt because everything is still a work in progress. Visuals are subject to change, but seeing that the visuals pretty much still stood the exact same last year, I think rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I really do appreciate what Platinum Games were trying to go for with this art style. It's super unique and really captures the themes and setting of Babylon's Fall quite well. It's just the execution isn't good. Now there are some moments where the game does actually look quite nice. Admittedly, this boss fight scenario with Xenon looks kind of beautiful, but more so than not, because of the drab level design, the game almost always looks washed out. So Babylon's Fall is supposed to release on March 3rd. However, on February 25th, a trial version of the game was released to allow players to dip their toes in and experience the first portion of the game. Any progress that you make within this trial then transfers over into the full game. So for the past few days, I've been experiencing what this game has to offer, going in with very little to low expectations. And I gotta say, I'm even disappointed furthermore than I thought I was going to be. There's something here with this game that I do like, and I feel like it possibly does have potential, but the ball has been dropped so hard, and this really isn't a good example of what Platinum Games can deliver. A lot of this game seems absolutely uninspired, and you can feel it when you play it. It honestly feels like at some point throughout development, Platinum Games just kind of gave up. This really does go back to that idea of, at one stage, Babylon's Fall was something totally different, more so akin to a proper Platinum Games single-player experience. But with the direction change and shift, I feel as if the studio ended up working on something they weren't exactly too fond of. So I want to talk about my experience with the few hours that I have played of this game. First things first, let's talk about the visual style. As again, I said it's quite unique and I understand what the studio was trying to go for, but really honestly, playing this game, it feels dated. It feels like you're playing, I don't know, a PlayStation 3 game of some sorts. And even still so, with the alterations that Platinum Games made, which thank God they did, if they didn't end up doing that, the game would have looked even worse. Still standing, it's just not a pretty game to look at, and I honestly do feel as if the visual style could have been executed better. You have this really apparent oil painting filter that is over the screen that moves with you, with the camera, all the time. It can be honestly quite distracting if you are paying attention to it. And because of the fact of this particular art style that the studio went for, it means that all of the assets in the game, the environments, are very low textured. I think this is intentional, but it sticks out a lot and would stick out even furthermore if that oil painting filter wasn't on the screen. The filter is there to give the illusion that the image that you are looking at is an oil painting. This idea right here is so cool, except it just wasn't executed right. And the environments, I have to say, are so drab and lifeless to a degree. While there's a slight variety in environments, throughout the demo you experience part of Babylon's Tower as well as this lower sort of city area, slum type area. as well as sort of like underwater segments. We have also seen like a snow area too from one of the trailers of last year. There's also some type of cavern, volcano looking space, but really all of the environments that I am seeing look absolutely drab, and because of the fact that this is a live service game and that the idea is to loot, you're going to be running through a lot of the same environments time and time again. I'm pretty sure I ran through what was the same dungeon, just slightly different with like a different screen filter on within the demo about 3 times, which I'm assuming that in the full version, you'll probably do a hell of a lot more. Also, the enemy designs and variety just feels like it's absolutely lacking. They've all got this sort of, I guess, anti-angelic type look to them with this blue color palette. You'll come across like knights with big shields or big hammers, as well as goblins or withered looking ghoul type things. Some of the designs sort of remind me of the angels from the Bayonetta series, just with a lot less passion put into the design itself. The whole near floating weapons thing though is cool. I have to say that, and that's very apparent that of course, yeah, this is a Platinum Games title because they're using some of that inspiration that they had from Nier Automata and infusing that into Babylon's Fall. One of the big mechanics of this game is known as quad wielding. With this thing known as a Gideon coffin that is on the back of the player character, it allows them to tether 4 weapons to themselves. And yeah, waving your weapons around the place and dodging and doing all of that cool stuff has that Platinum Games flair to it. It does feel like a Platinum Games title. So let's talk about the gameplay, because of course that's probably the most important factor, right? Now do understand that this is a strictly online game only. Please do not purchase this and think that you're going to be able to play this offline, because you are going to absolutely need to be connected to the internet. It is a live service game through and through. Now, this is not to say that you can't play the game by yourself, you totally can, except the game is designed with co-op in mind, and so you are going to have a rough time if you want to experience any of the dungeon missions by yourself. What's incredibly agitating about this is none of the missions or dungeons scale, depending on how many players are in your party. So if there's 1 person in your party, you're just soloing, all of the enemy health and damage is going to be the exact same as if there is 4 people in your party. Now, some of these dungeons you will be able to do by yourself, but you're going to be standing there smacking the enemy for about 15 minutes in order to kill it, because its health is so high because the dungeon expects you to have 4 players. And because so many people I feel like have just been turned off of Babylon's Fall, and that the marketing side of this game hasn't really been that great, I feel like there's not going to be that much interest there, which directly impacts the game's core as it relies on players in order to actually play the game. If there's no one playing this game, you're going to have an absolutely hard time actually playing it. I only ever matched with people 2 times out of the, I think, 8 different dungeons that I ended up doing. And so because the interest is just so low with Babylon's Fall right now, honestly, I can see that this is a service that is going to die very quick, very hard. As I was saying, the gameplay is sluggish. It really feels like one of the slowest Platinum Games titles when it comes to their action formula out of the bunch. And it's really hard being used to something like Nier Automata then going into Babylon's Fall. I do feel like the gameplay pacing is toned down because it is simply a live service game. You're expected to be playing with up to 3 other players. And so yeah, if you've got all of these people running around at the speed of 2B, flashing a weapon left, right, and center, things are going to get pretty out of control. But the sluggish, stiff controls of this game just make it so hard to be able to enjoy it. You do have all of those tropes though that you would have in that Platinum Games formula, like the dodging with the attack indicators and the perfect dodging, then following up with a counter. Those all feel really good, like what you come to expect from Bayonetta, or of course, Nier Automata. The flashy attack particle effects are all there and all look really, really cool. You have your heavy attacks with triangle, your light attacks with square. But going back to that quadruple wielding mechanic, you can also assign weapons to R2 and L2. These then become spirit attacks. There's a whole variety of different weapons in the game, ranging from swords to bows to staves to axes and hammers, all of which perform differently depending on what binding you have it set to. So square and triangle are your normal go-to attacks that your character will execute, but the R2 and L2 attacks, your spirit ones, are able to be executed even while you're attacking with square and triangle. This makes for a lot of numbers to come up onto the screen and for a lot of flashy effects to happen, and it feels really good, especially with that PS5 vibration going off, and looks kind of cool sometimes. The spirit attacks use the red bar resource, and this is built up in combat by simply attacking enemies with square or triangle. Dodging also uses this resource too. The gameplay itself though isn't as technical as you'd come to expect with a Platinum Games title, with a lot of different button combos to perform flashy moves in return. As I said, this really does feel like the most watered down Platinum Games action title so far. You can hold down square and triangle to do charge moves. You can press back on the analog stick while comboing to perform a slightly different attack, as well as rake enemies up into the air, follow through with triangle to slam downwards. But from everything that we saw in that 2019 trailer, it looked a lot more technical. The total skill cap of the combat system itself looked like something you'd expect from Platinum Games. The core though of Babylon's gameplay is certainly the quadruple wielding system to combo together all four of your different weapons, and I will admittedly say that it is kind of neat trying to figure out what your build is. If you literally want to wield 4 bows, you can do that. 2 staves, 2 hammers, you can do that. And I can imagine that by the end game, you'll probably have some really powerful weapons that will be able to perform some really cool stuff in the ways of its spirit attacks. But for the base combat system in itself, it really does feel uninspired. And yeah, as I said, this is a looter, so going through the dungeons, you're going to have loot that drops, which are relics. At the end of the mission, you then open up your relics, which are essentially little boxes that do contain equipment, and you'll get a bunch of equipment. You then go into the equipment menu, switch out your headpiece, torso piece, arm piece, all of which have different stats and bonuses, the typical to be expected stuff when it comes to looter RPGs. Also, with each enemy encounter you have throughout these dungeons, you are going to get ranked on your performance in similar fashion to something like Bayonetta, even down to the same tier of ranks that you get, like stone, bronze, platinum, pure platinum. Those will exist here in Babylon's Fall, and of course you'll be ranked depending on your performance in that encounter, how fast you completed the encounter, how many dodges you performed, how many heavy or light attacks you performed. If you're familiar with the Bayonetta combat scoring, then you're going to be familiar with this. It's kind of neat, to be honest. I do like it, except it's hard to have something kind of cool like that when the gameplay is lacking so hard. And also, you're not really doing overly too much in the dungeons other than pushing your way through, defeating enemies, occasionally jumping over some blue spikes, maybe coming across a chest filled with loot. But you're not doing too much. There's really no exploration aspect of this game whatsoever. It's just dungeon after dungeon after dungeon. And yeah, in terms of the story, I wasn't interested, I'm gonna be honest. And I think that the voice acting is kind of a part to play in that. Nothing against the voice actors, I really think it's just the direction of the story. But it was really hard to enjoy. The voice acting just really isn't good.
Damn, he got away.
And because this is a live service game, well, you can damn well ne'er expect a battle pass. Yeah, there's a battle pass in this bad boy. Not only that too, but there's daily login rewards, which just, to me, whenever I see something like this, screams mobile phone game. Why is this here in my console game? I have no idea. What's even crazier about this is going to be a full-priced title. It's surprising, seeing something like this to this kind of quality level should honestly be free to play. I don't think this would hurt so much if it was free to play, but because Square Enix are charging full price for this, Yeah, no thanks. I really do have a feeling that very soon, maybe by the end of the year or sometime next year, Babylon's Fall will be a free-to-play game. What's really strange about this though is there is something here that I oddly enjoy. I think it's because it's that Platinum Games DNA that's in it that is holding the last tether of my attention as of right now. But there is something that I just oddly like. I think it's just probably the idea of maybe knowing that, like, if this wasn't a live service co-op multiplayer game, it would be in a totally different state. It's knowing that this game has potential, or once had potential. But however guys, that is my impressions of Babylon's Fall. I thought I would just get this video out to pretty much inform you guys what this game is, and also be able to express my disappointment, because I was really looking forward to this, especially following up after Nier Automata. Thank God Platinum Games have Bayonetta 3 this year, hopefully this year, because I think that's going to be a really good cover-up, and will likely overshadow the living life force out of Babylon's Fall, to a degree of Platinum Games likely pretending that Babylon's Fall never happened. With all that being said though guys, I'm Cynical, hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and I'll catch you dudes in the next one. Peace.